Welcome everyone to the all-new Mercedes GLC 43 AMG, and this car is sparking quite a bit of controversy as it has ditched the twin-turbo V6 from before, and now we have the handcrafted AMG 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder under the hood here in this new GLC 43. So, of course, if you haven't checked out the full tour review, definitely go have a full watch on that to see all the interesting and fun features about this car. But we're gonna go take this thing on a drive today and check out if it's still good even with this 4-cylinder under the hood. And right off the bat, I can tell you over this past week, it has changed my opinion. I didn't think this was going to be a fun car. It is still a pretty fun car, even with this powertrain and engine, which is quite impressive actually. So what do we have right here? Of course, AMG steering wheel. We have all of our different drive modes located right here on our steering wheel that we can cycle through on the infotainment system, all the way up to race. You can even go into this master dynamics mode as well, so lots of stuff to play around with there. We have these customizable buttons over here. If you can see, we can change our exhaust, traction, and of course we can change them up here, so we really can make either of these buttons whatever you want it to be, to kind of change some of your dynamic modes, which is pretty cool. Lots of different gauge clusters as well. We can kind of cycle through, as well as for a heads-up display. One thing to point out though is this one is for some reason missing the driver assistance package, so it doesn't have advanced driver system. So there's no blind spot monitoring on this vehicle, for example, which is odd for an $80,000 car. But is there a blind spot? And while there is blind spot monitoring on this car, it doesn't have any sort of lane keep assist systems, unfortunately. So it's just a little weird for a car that's almost $80,000 and has the Pinnacle package. But nonetheless, you still get all of that fun performance stuff here. So we have great camera systems. We have parking assistance as well if you need to help find a spot. Great 360 cameras, really top tier for Mercedes there. And of course, our gear selectors up here on the stock. And we have some cool gauges in the screen here, so we can check our AMG performance gauges. So from vehicle to engine, we even have an IWC clock with this cool animation that pops up there. Really interesting stuff throughout this screen you can play with. It's a lot to get used to. There's a lot of plastic over here, but I think the system itself works quite nice. And this trim and all the other materials in this vehicle are really fun and nice to use with. Let's pop it into drive, and we also have our Mercedes navigation here with AR navigation, so it's going to overlay these animations on the road in front of us, which is pretty cool. Let's pop it into Sport Plus, so you can hear the exhaust opens up a little bit, and shockingly, this engine sounds quite good. And there is a little bit of some pumped in engine sound, but I've listened to this thing from the outside and I can confirm that it actually sounds really good. So there is some still real noise going on here, which I quite like. And the other best part about this engine and Mercedes' latest engineering efforts is that, like some other German vehicles like a BMW, it has a 48-volt system, and it can just shut off when you're coming to a stop really quickly, or even just on the highway and you're coasting in the efficient drive modes. And what that's going to do is, of course, help to improve MPG, though shockingly, this doesn't have the best MPG. So a direct competitor to this would be the BMW X3 M50, the latest one, and that does happen to have the B58 engine, which I think I would still prefer over this car. We're in eco mode essentially now, and it's still making those crazy sounds, but I don't know, this is a pretty good engine for this vehicle. It really helps to set it apart, I think, from a lot of the competition. And I think a lot of people maybe initially turned away from it being a 4-cylinder, but you have to remember, this is not just a simple 4-cylinder. It has over 400 horsepower, this vehicle, paired with this 48-volt mild hybrid system. And I think this newer generation GLC is a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more put together than the last generation AMG one, and you're getting quite a lot of interesting stuff standard on this car, such as rear wheel steering, adaptive dampering. So it's going to really help to make this chassis more dynamic than it was before. Thankfully, it's not an aggressive amount of rear wheel steering. It's more of to help this thing going through corners and be a little bit more sharper. Now, of course, we have this 9-speed automatic gearbox here, which is AMG tuned, and it's sending a lot more power to the rear wheels in this one. And I have to say, it kind of shifts very aggressively when you put it in the more aggressive drive modes. Really feel it in the entire car. It almost feels like a dual clutch. And you get really wild upshift crackles and pops on this engine and exhaust system here. really fun sounds actually, so I quite like that. It is enjoyable, and you have a button here. You can actually put it into quiet mode regardless of what drive mode you're in. So if it's being too loud for you, you can tone it down just a little bit. But you know, I honestly wasn't expecting that going into this being a 4-cylinder vehicle, that it's gonna have a really wild exhaust system that honestly sounds better than some vehicles that have 6 cylinders these days with so much of some silencing going on there. So that was a nice pleasant surprise to me. And again, you can just switch into being a more efficient vehicle, and it kind of coasts along. It's quiet. Ride is pretty nice, though it definitely is on the stiffer side around the entire ballpark here. Whatever, regardless mode you're in, it's definitely going to be on the stiffer side of it. So you might just want to go for a regular GLC instead of going for this 43 AMG one. And of course there's the 63, which will just get even more stiffer and more aggressive, which is essentially this engine plus a plug-in hybrid powertrain. And I think one of the other most fun aspects of this car is, again, with those kind of multiple personalities I think it can have, is when you do get on it a little bit, it does kind of reward you. It has some really aggressive shifts and pops, bangs. It's a very theatrical experience, especially if you're doing something like a race start mode, which, oh my gosh, that's an event in itself. Really great response from this 9-speed automatic. Now, it is a multi-clutch unit, so it's not a traditional full torque converter style automatic gearbox, but it can be tuned in a way through these different drive modes to feel almost like a dual clutch style gearbox with those really big kickbacks between those gear shifts. And I really like that theatrical experience. Now, out here on the highway, again, pretty quiet, and this is where we can kind of see that efficiency come into action here. So the engine's actually off right now. We have a little sailboat icon right there, and it's just completely coasting. And thanks to that 48-volt belt start generator, the second I put my foot on the gas, it comes right back to life and just gets going for you pretty quickly. You don't even really notice the engine turn on or turn off, which is pretty impressive. You know, normally I would do a test out here on the highways to kind of demonstrate the adaptive cruise control systems, but this one doesn't really have any of that, so we're not really going to go through that. I think AMG and Mercedes wanted all of the journalists driving this particular press car to really drive the car and not just kind of focus so much on the amazing tech they can have, but really focus on all the engineering stuff they put into this new GLC 43 to kind of make it more unique and stand out across from the segment, which I think they have done a pretty good job at. Even at higher speeds out here on the highway, very stable, really quiet. There's just a little bit of some wind rushing sound around us, but I think overall it's doing a pretty good job. This one's also riding on more winter-focused tire, which I'm not too sure why they gave it that to me already like this. It's only October here, so we don't really need any sort of winter tires quite yet. It doesn't really snow until January, but it's doing it pretty nice. I'd really be nice to see this vehicle and drive it on some more summer tires instead of these, but hopefully we'll get a different experience, maybe with the GLC 63 later in the spring of next year. And you guys, this is the GLC 43 AMG. You know, it has good sharp turn in. I think it manages the weight of being an SUV pretty well. Fun gearbox, pretty peppy and surprisingly good engine. I think it's generally overall a well-rounded car. Yes, it's definitely more on the expensive side of the vehicles in this segment, especially compared to something like an SQ6 or the new X3 M50, which, yes, they are getting up in this price range now, but you also are getting more cylinders. I think a little bit more of a more traditional, enjoyable experience. This is definitely a very tech-forward, high-tech cabin and experience space and powertrain, and you know that also is something you're gonna have to remember in terms of service costs and maintenance and long-term reliability. I mean, I think generally these handcrafted engines have been doing okay and well in GLA 45s. It's been around for a while now, but this is a large vehicle. It's pushing out quite a bit of power now, so I don't know. We'll see how that handles itself out long term. But overall, I think I've been generally quite impressed with this vehicle over the course of this week. It changed my own opinion going into it, and then now having to be able to drive it over the course of this week. I like it. It's unique. It stands out. The steering wheel, like I said, alone just feels special with this Alcantara leather blend. Steering itself, you know, it's a little bit numb and it's feeling wise. It's pretty good in terms of actual steering precision, but I'd like a little more feel baked into this. It feels a little bit overboosted in some scenarios. Suspension I think is quite good, definitely on the stiffer side as well, but the damper range throughout the drive modes definitely is a welcome thing to experience. I'm just you know, it's typical with a lot of these German manufacturers. They do kind of nickel and dime you for quite a lot of features, such as lane departure warning and full radar adaptive cruise controls and all that stuff at around almost $80,000. It should just come standard with it at that point, but that does leave room for other options for a lot of other buyers to kind of pick and choose what they want. And of course, you know, some of the competition now is a little bit bigger than the GLC, so you may want to think about cargo space, and do you need to upgrade to a GLE maybe, or, you know, switch to a competitor, go to an X5. There's a lot of things to kind of consider, so I think this vehicle, yes, it definitely does stand out against the pack with its unique kind of Mercedes persona it's put on it. It's aggressive, but not as super aggressive. It's like this performance luxury that AMG is doing well. They're baking in a little bit more of that aggressive experience into it with things like that race start experience, a lot of the drive modes, and all of the crazy graphics and screens, but it's still at the end of the day more comfortable cruising vehicle than per se some of the other competition, which has a little more of a sportier edge to it. This one tries, I think, to make up for it with that, like, you know, those aggressive transmission shifts, but the things like the brake pedal, for example, I think could work a little bit more on that feel. Same thing with the steering in its sense, and, you know, again, at the end of the day, it's a Mercedes, and luxury still is a high first parameter here, and it does that aspect and all that stuff very well. Like, we even have seat kinetics in here, which is quite nice. So get a little bit more of a, not a full massage experience, but a relaxing, comfortable experience in here for you. Nonetheless, guys, this is the all-new GLC 4043 AMG. Definitely check out for more videos coming soon on Allcarnews, and as always, thank you guys for joining. Cheers.